The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Very quickly, there is a sort of new front line or new battle lines developing. And I hate to use like war terminology when it's not war, but it seems to be the right way to talk about this. The battle lines of the anti-LGBTQ movement have shifted over the last 4 years because in June of 2015, we had the decision that made it illegal for states to ban same-sex marriage. And very quickly, we saw the battle lines shift to things like religious freedom as a guise under which discrimination would be allowed, or questions of, well, you can still be fired for your real or perceived sexual orientation in 20-something states. I don't remember the exact number. And that's been the battle line for a while. But now a lot of the trans-related activism that has been going on has led to a sort of new battle along the LGBTQ lines for the anti-LGBTQ community, which is making trans children and school sports a sort of culture war battleground. And this is I don't want to ignore the fact that this is a real thing, but the issue of, boys competing in girls' sports or vice versa on biological bases is just not what is going to determine the future success or failure of the United States as a Western democracy. Like, I don't want to, I'm being careful here, Pat, because I don't want to pretend that this doesn't matter because it affects people. But you have people on the right who have successfully turned the issue of figuring out if someone's born biologically male and they are a transgender woman, should they be allowed to participate with girls in X sport or in Y sport or whatever? This is just not a major issue in terms of a societal thing. And I'm trying to find the right way to sort of explore that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can call it an issue, but maybe it's the 500th biggest issue facing the United States today. And it seems as if Republicans are trying to make this what the election's all about, what the 2020 election's going to be about. Tomorrow, there's a governor's race in Kentucky, and they're even trying to make this like the focal point of the governor's race, even though it doesn't seem like it's in any way connected to what the needs are in Kentucky. They're running ads. The Republicans are trying to portray this issue as more important than it is, that if you have, men wrestling with girls in high school sports, that's just going to be the end of society as we know it. Sure, that's something that we can discuss and, it's something that we can debate. But to just pretend that this is some major issue affecting the country when you have states like Kentucky that, can't afford, many of the people in those states are poor, they can't afford health care, they can't, provide for the basic needs of living, and you're going to totally distract people and focus on this issue instead. That's the approach that they're trying to take.
And they're choosing to start this in places like Kentucky for very specific reasons. They are testing, including with ads that have there's an ad that has it's two girls wrestling and then a referee, and it shows the referee about to, announce like a winner and lift someone's hand. And I'm going from memory here. And then there's something like ominous about what if the rules change and then it's like a boy and a girl. And then what if they're testing this in places that are more socially conservative like Kentucky to see what kind of reaction they get, because in certain communities, this type of issue, as statistically insignificant as it is, without discrediting the importance of any particular person's experience, they can see, is this something we can raise money around? Is this something we can anger people enough about that it can become a wedge issue in some local races? And unfortunately, the answer may be yes.
Yeah, we know that people already vote against their own interests. So it's not hard to believe, too, that they just are voting on things that really don't affect them that much or don't affect that many people that much or shouldn't be the focal points that we decide an election over. But that's what they're trying to push here because it's a thing that they think that they can win. And I'm actually worried, it could be a successful strategy, even though it seems like it's below the belt, even though it seems like you're distracting from the issue, that could still pull out the right voters for them and cause them to win. And it could also cause the other side, like the Democratic governor's candidate and, the party in general, to try to back off the issue, to not try to push in any protections for LGBT individuals and not try to make this an issue at all, because if Democrats feel as though it's a losing issue for them, they're not going to want to touch this and advance the LGBT agenda.
Well, part of it is so you're pointing out one way in which it can have a blowback effect on Democrats because Democrats might just back off of legislation or protections. But there's a whole other way that they win, which is sometimes merely by introducing the issue and creating false questions and forcing the Democratic candidate or elected official to state a position, merely having to state a position creates a problem, and it completely expands the perception of the importance of the issue. And then you get the blowback, which is, did you see what the Democratic governor said about this issue that affects almost no one and is not really important in figuring out how we're going to organize ourselves as a society or whatever? Just getting them to have to spend time on it in a way can also be a win.
Yeah, because the position that the lefty takes in these scenarios is often nuanced. It kind of
Yes.
reminds me of the audience question that you answered last week about if it makes sense for people to state their pronouns when you're meeting, even if it doesn't seem particularly relevant. I think you responded to that question with like a 4 or 5 minute answer. If you're doing that and the opposing party is just saying, no, I think it's totally needless, we shouldn't have to do that, then what sounds more persuasive to the average person? Unfortunately, it's the right winger.
Absolutely. And this applies, we've talked about it, it applies on abortion. Hey, listen, abortion's murder. It's bad. The left doesn't have an equally simple position. It's nuanced. Hey, taxes, I earned my money. Taxes, they should be as low as possible because it's my money. The left doesn't have the opposite as a position. And this is a perpetual issue that George Lakoff has written about quite a bit. Okay, let's move on. I told you when there was a proposal from the Trump administration to cut food stamp benefits, also known as SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, to more than 3 million people. We've been in the public comment phase of that. And this Friday, next Friday, or Friday, November 8th, I guess it is the last day for the comment period. And of course, very few people are going to remember to or choose to go and send a comment to the government about cutting food stamps, particularly because this is an administration that has shown it doesn't care what the public thinks. They're just going to do whatever they want. The USDA did an analysis of the plan, and it's going to affect a lot of kids. There's about 1 million kids who, as a result of this cut, would no longer automatically qualify for free school lunches. The USDA says almost half of them would be able to get free lunches, but only if they reapply to the program, which, of course, if there are many kids who are in situations where they get free lunches, whose parents are less equipped to understand that there is this process and to go through it, whether it's for resource reasons or the wherewithal or whatever the case may be. Some kids would lose free lunches because of different income limits and would maybe go to reduced or sometimes full. And then, of course, it's 3 million people total. 1 million of them are kids. There's a whole bunch of other adults who would also be affected. I think that this is one of the most wrong-headed programs to go after, Pat, for multiple reasons. Number one, it deals with people just having food. That's number one. Number two, it also is so economically stimulative. We know that food stamp spending is, listen, I hate all of these analogies about you give someone a welfare dollar and they'll go and spend it on who knows what. The reality is food stamp benefits are spent on food. Republicans will say, well, there are items that are available at grocery stores that aren't really food, which someone could use the food stamp benefits for. It's not a lot of money, number one. And number two, even with the so-called free riders who are using it for candy or whatever, if that's even possible, this is hugely economically stimulative. This is like the last program I would be going after.
Yeah, and of course, it's horrible for Republicans to do this, but it's not in any way surprising. Like, this is what we've come to expect from them. But like, honestly, I'm even more upset with the media by how they're handling this issue, because you can come across an article here and there about it, but it's not like it's front page news. And in a way, it should be. This is affecting 3 million people and their ability to eat, and including 1 million children.
Right.
So that should be front page news. That should be what CNN has as their headline right now, instead of talking about maybe something else that's going on in the country around the clock. And you're right. And the other thing that doesn't get mentioned when you read these articles is that food stamps are economically stimulative. It talks about the cost of food stamps, but it doesn't take a look at the other side, that if you have people who are able to eat, well, then they're able to participate in the economy. And it turns out that it ends up being a good investment. And to point to what you said, it was the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities, which is a think tank that did the study to see the effects of food stamps. And for every single dollar that we spend on food stamps as a country, 1.7 dollars is generated in stimulus.
Yeah.
So
there's actually two. So you actually got to the two ways in which it's stimulative. There's a multiplier effect where you could say, okay, if you give $1 to a really rich person and they put it in the bank, what is the economic stimulus of that? If you give $1 out as a food stamp benefit to somebody who needs it, and then they go and buy food with it, what's the stimulus of that? And as Pat pointed out, there's one study that says that you generate $1.7 in the economy for every dollar in food stamp spending. But Pat pointed to the other stimulus, which is hungry kids don't do well in school. Hungry parents are more likely to miss work or whatever, right? So there's all these intangible ways as well, where for society and culture, there's a stimulative effect that by giving a really rich person $1 to put in a bank account, you simply don't get. So we'll see what happens. I think we have a sense of what's going to happen. The comment period does end Friday, and I encourage you to submit a comment if you are so inclined. We've been covering on the regular show some of these erratic Twitter rants that the president goes on, and very often they are nonsensical insofar as their grammar and syntax, and of course they're riddled with lies. But there was an interesting study done about misspellings in high-profile tweets, including presidents, and it turns out that Donald Trump's spelling error rate is something like, I'm trying to do the math here, is it 140 divided by 6? It's got to be about what, like 60? No, is that about 30 or 40 times higher than Barack Obama's? Donald Trump has an error rate of 1.4%, whereas Barack Obama has an error rate of 0.06%. But maybe that's not fair. Maybe when you're a former president, you have more time to spell check. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe that's it. And this isn't even counting Trump's grammar mistakes and the erroneous use of capitalization, too.
Of course.
So if you added that up, then I think every single tweet would have some sort of error in it. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like the president has the 10th or 11th biggest Twitter account in the world, and he doesn't have someone spell checking it. I mean, if you were running a company that had a Twitter account that big, you would want to have some person on your social media team monitoring everything. But, this is just what we've come to expect from him. What is a concern, though, legally is when he deletes those misspelled tweets, because he's not supposed to be doing that. That violates the Presidential Records Act, which isn't something that it's like a crime that maybe he's committing that I don't get too worked up about, but just the fact that it's another crime that he's able to get away with, that kind of upsets me.
It's just another one on the list. I read something kind of interesting, which just gives us a little bit of insight into Trump's personality, which is, I don't know if this is true, but there are some pictures that seem to support it. Apparently, Donald Trump needs reading glasses in order to be able to tweet, because he needs reading glasses. He's 73, and it's common that people need reading glasses at that age. And apparently he hates being seen with the reading glasses. So that is leading to him tweeting alone, where he'll tweet only when he's completely alone, which is part of the problem, because then people aren't seeing what he's doing. And this has apparently led to some Trump staffers considering asking Twitter to automatically put a 15-minute hold on Trump's tweets. I mean, do you realize how much chaos this guy is causing on Twitter? That they're asking for a special policy where Trump hits tweet and he doesn't realize it, but it doesn't publish for 15 minutes. And during 15 minutes, other people who have access to the account could go in and edit, modify, or delete the tweets. This is a degree of chaos that is involved with Twitter at this point that is completely unprecedented and unpredictable.
And I just don't understand this guy, because wouldn't the misspellings be more embarrassing than wearing the reading glasses? Especially when so many people wear reading glasses. It's a totally normal thing, especially for someone in their 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, instead he finds it less embarrassing to spell showbiz, shoebiz, hamburgers, hamburgers, lightweight spelled. I mean, there's just so many different examples. Unfair instead of unfair. Those are the ones that get me. Not just when you misspell a word, but you use in a completely wrong word that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and of course, and then with Cobb Fefe, having your then press secretary go out and say that was geared towards a particular audience, and they know exactly what the president meant by that. It's like, really, do they? Because I've not heard them explain what it is that he meant by that. So presidential misspellings, relatively low on the list of important issues, but all of the chaos behind it will actually, I'm hoping either tomorrow or the next day, there's actually a bigger developing story here about all of the methods that Trump's aides are attempting to try to sort of control what gets out publicly. And the 15-minute Twitter delay is just one thing. But there are other things that Trump staff have been trying to do. And maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow or Wednesday. That does it for today. New show, new bonus show coming up tomorrow. Welcome to all of our new members from over the weekend, many taking advantage of the YouTube 50 code that was published along with some photographs to YouTube over the weekend. It's an entire thing that Pat doesn't even know about. Maybe we will discuss it more on some future program.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.